There's one invisible habit, buried deep in the shadow, that quietly drains more energy than lack of sleep, more than stress, and even more than overwork. You carry it with you every single day without even realizing it, like a hidden weight strapped to your back. And the strange part? The more you try to ignore it, the heavier it gets. Have you ever noticed how you can sleep a full 8 hours, eat healthy meals, do everything right, and still wake up exhausted, uninspired, almost hollow inside? That exhaustion doesn't always come from your body. It comes from your psyche. From a part of you that you've been repressing for years, sometimes decades. Carl Jung called this hidden part the shadow. And inside, it lives one specific habit. Not a single action you do once in a while, but a repeating pattern, an unconscious loop, quietly siphoning away your vitality. The shadow doesn't just appear in your dreams or in your dark moods. It shows up in the way you force yourself to smile when you're angry, in the way you silence your thoughts just to be liked, in the way you pretend to be someone you're not. And here's what makes it so dangerous. It feels normal. It feels like the right thing to do. But underneath, it's the very habit that keeps you small, restless, and endlessly drained. So, what is this shadow habit? And more importantly, how can you see it, name it, and break free from it before it drains even more of your energy? Stay with me until the end, because the final insight about this habit is the one Jung himself warned was the most dangerous when left unconscious. When Jung spoke about the shadow, he didn't mean it was evil. He was describing all the parts of yourself that you've pushed away, the emotions, impulses, and truths that didn't fit into the version of you the world wanted to see. As children, we learn quickly which parts of us are welcomed and which parts get rejected. Maybe your anger was punished. Maybe your sadness was mocked as weakness. Maybe your creativity was labeled too strange. So you buried those sides of yourself. You hid them away, thinking it was safer. But here's the paradox. What we bury doesn't disappear, it hides. And from that darkness it begins to shape us. The shadow doesn't politely knock on your door. It seeps into your tone of voice, your choices, your relationships. And one of the clearest ways it shows itself is through a draining habit, self-betrayal. Think about it. How many times have you smiled when deep down you wanted to say no? How many times have you agreed to something that went against your values just to keep the peace? How many times have you swallowed your feelings until they sat like a stone in your chest? Each of these moments might seem small, but they're not. They're little cuts to your psyche, tiny leaks of energy. Over time, they build into a constant fatigue you can't quite explain. This is why shadow work matters more than ever. We live in a culture obsessed with performance, where the pressure to stay positive, productive, and presentable never lets up. Social media is full of polished smiles. Work demands endless adaptability. Even friendships sometimes push us to play roles instead of being real. And every time we deny a truth inside ourselves, we're feeding the shadow. But doing shadow work doesn't mean drowning in darkness. It means reclaiming the energy that's been trapped in repression. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That's exactly what happens with self-betrayal. You think it's just your personality, or that life is just difficult. But in reality, it's your unconscious draining you because you haven't brought those truths into the light. So here's where we're going. We'll look at how this habit works, how it shows up in daily life, how it affects your relationships and even your body, and most importantly, how you can start to break free. Because the moment you stop betraying yourself, the energy that's been locked away begins to return. Imagine what it would feel like to wake up without that inner battle, to speak your truth without fear, to finally feel aligned instead of split. That's what shadow work offers. Not perfection, but wholeness. And to get there, let me share a story, a symbolic tale that shows how the shadow steals energy in plain sight. Let me tell you a story. There was once a traveler who carried a golden lamp. It shined so brightly that everyone admired it. The traveler was proud of this light, polishing it daily, showing it off wherever he went. But there was a secret he never shared. Every night, when no one was watching, he would place stones inside the base of the lamp. Why? Because long ago, someone told him his light was too much, too bright, too different. So he learned to dim it. At first the stones seemed small, almost harmless. But as the years passed, the weight grew heavier. He carried the lamp everywhere, and while it still looked beautiful on the outside, it became unbearably heavy to hold. Every step drained him. The cruel irony? He could have removed the stones at any time. But because he believed hiding his light was safer, he never dared. This is the story of self-betrayal. The lamp is your authentic self. The stones are the truths, the emotions, the desires you've stuffed into the shadow. Every yes when you meant no. Every silence when your voice longed to be heard. Every smile that covered your hurt. Each one adds another stone. And while the world might admire your polished lamp, only you feel the crushing weight inside. Now let's bring this into real life. Picture yourself at work. You're in a meeting, your idea is brilliant, but you stay quiet because you don't want to look arrogant. Or maybe with friends, you laugh at a joke that secretly hurts you because you don't want to ruin the mood. These seem like small compromises, but each one is another stone in your lamp, and your body feels it. The tightness in your chest, the heaviness in your shoulders, the fatigue that no amount of coffee can fix. This is why so many people feel tired even after a full night of rest, because rest doesn't restore what repression drains. You can sleep 8 hours, but if your inner world is full of unspoken truths, you'll still wake up weary. Energy doesn't come only from food or sleep. It comes from alignment, from living in integrity with yourself. Shadow work begins the moment you ask, "What stones have I placed in my lamp? What truths have I hidden because I thought they weren't acceptable?" The story of the traveler reminds us, the burden is self-created, and that means the freedom is self-created too. So here's the real question. Are you ready to look inside your lamp? To face the shadow habit that's been quietly weighing you down? Because once you see it clearly, the next step is learning the signs, the subtle, everyday ways this draining pattern shows up in your life. And that's exactly where we're going next. So, how can you spot this draining shadow habit of self-betrayal in your daily life? Let's start with 3 of the most common signs. First, saying yes when your whole body is screaming no. You know that heavy feeling when you agree to something you don't actually want? Maybe it's going to an event, taking on more work, or doing a favor when you're already stretched thin. Outwardly, you smile and say, "Sure, no problem." But inside, a quieter voice whispers, "Why did I do that?" Every false yes costs energy. Jung reminded us that repression isn't only about anger or fear. It's about silencing the true impulse of your soul. When you override your truth to keep the peace, you send yourself the message, "My needs don't matter." That inner conflict is like a leak in your energy system. Instead of flowing freely, your energy splits into 2 directions, the self you show and the self you hide. Here's something you can try. The next time you feel yourself about to say yes, pause. Place your hand on your chest and ask, "Does this choice expand me, or does it shrink me?" If it shrinks you, maybe it's time to honor the no. Second, smiling through discomfort. This is one of the most subtle forms of self-betrayal. You're in a conversation, someone crosses a line, makes a cutting remark, or puts you in a situation that feels wrong. Instead of responding honestly, you smile. You laugh it off. You pretend it's fine. But your body knows the truth. The shadow holds on to every swallowed word, every fake smile, like another stone in the lamp. You walk away drained, not because of what was said, but because of what you didn't say. And that mask of the smile takes energy to maintain. Over time, it becomes automatic. And suddenly, even small social interactions leave you feeling wiped out. What if, instead of forcing a smile, you tried a small truth? Something gentle but real like, "That didn't sit right with me," or "I'd prefer something different." These little truths bring back more energy than the best nap. Third, feeling guilty for having needs. This might be the heaviest stone of all. So many of us learned that having needs for rest, for space, for understanding was selfish. So we pushed them down and tried to be endlessly giving. On the surface, that looks noble, but underneath, resentment builds, and the shadow feeds on that silence. Jung said, "What you resist not only persists, but grows. The more you resist your needs, the more they transform into exhaustion, bitterness, or bursts of anger. The problem isn't your needs. The problem is burying them. Try this. Write down 3 needs you've been ignoring. They don't have to be dramatic. Maybe it's needing more quiet time. Maybe it's clearer boundaries at work. Maybe it's simply asking for help. Notice how just naming them brings a small lift. That awareness is the first step to reclaiming energy. These first 3 signs, false yeses, fake smiles, and guilty needs, might look small. But together, they create the invisible drain that keeps you tired no matter how much you rest. And here's the twist. This isn't only about how you treat yourself. This shadow habit spills into your relationships, your work, and the way people see you. And that's where we're headed next. So far, we've looked at how self-betrayal shows up inside you, the false yeses, the fake smiles, the guilt around having needs. But the shadow doesn't stop there. It leaks into your relationships, your work, and the way others treat you. Let's look at 3 more signs of this draining habit. First, apologizing for existing. Have you ever noticed how often you say, sorry, for no real reason? Sorry for asking a question. Sorry for walking into a room. Sorry for simply taking up space. On the surface, it sounds polite, but underneath, it reveals a deep belief from the shadow. My presence is a burden. That belief is like a hole in your energy bucket. Every unnecessary apology is another leak. And here's the catch: people pick up on it. They start to unconsciously treat you as smaller than you really are. Try this experiment. For one day, track how many times you say sorry. Replace at least half with thank you. Instead of sorry I'm late, try thank you for waiting. That simple shift restores both energy and dignity. Second, overperforming to be loved. This one is everywhere. At work, you're the one taking on extra tasks no one asked for. In friendships, you're the planner, the fixer, the one holding it all together. In relationships, you give and give, secretly hoping that if you just prove your worth, you'll finally feel secure. But here's the trap. Overperforming doesn't guarantee love. It guarantees exhaustion. The unconscious message is, I'm only lovable if I do more. And no matter how much you give, it's never enough. You're running a marathon with no finish line. Ask yourself, if I stopped giving, who would I be afraid of losing? The answer will show you exactly where your shadow is most active. Third, avoiding conflict at all costs. Conflict isn't fun, but it's necessary. It's how boundaries are set, how respect is earned, how truth comes to light. But if self-betrayal is running the show, conflict feels terrifying. So you swallow your words, back down, or change the subject just to keep the peace. The result? Outward calm, inward chaos. Energy drains not from the conflict itself, but from the endless effort to avoid it. Think about it. How many times have you retyped a text message 10 times just to make sure no one gets upset? That over-editing is the shadow at work, stealing your energy. What if instead you tried one simple truth? Something as small as, I see this differently, or, that doesn't work for me. You don't need to win the argument. You just need to stop erasing yourself. These 3 signs, apologizing for existing, overperforming to be loved, and avoiding conflict, are like invisible taxes you pay to the shadow. They don't just drain your energy, they shape your entire life story. They determine who you attract, how you're treated, and whether your relationships lift you up or wear you down. And here's the twist. This shadow habit doesn't only shape your outer world, it also attacks your inner alignment, cutting you off from the very parts of you that hold passion, power, and truth. That's what we'll explore next. We've uncovered 6 signs of self-betrayal so far. They show how the shadow steals your energy and your choices, your words, and your relationships. But to really break this draining pattern, you need to go deeper to the lessons that turn awareness into integration. Let's look at 3 final truths. First, disowning anger. Anger is one of the most exiled emotions in the shadow. Many of us were taught that anger is dangerous, rude, or unspiritual, so we suppress it. But buried anger doesn't vanish. It mutates. It turns into chronic fatigue, resentment, or even quiet hostility. The truth is, energy doesn't drain because anger is bad. It drains because holding it down takes constant effort, like trying to keep a beach ball pushed underwater. Here's a practice. Write down the answer to this simple question. What am I angry about that I haven't admitted? You don't need to act on it. Just naming it releases the pressure. Awareness itself is liberating. Second, splitting off desire. Desire isn't only about romance. It's about what makes you feel alive, creativity, adventure, new experiences. But if you were taught that wanting too much makes you selfish, you may have pushed your desires into the shadow. And what happens then? Life feels flat. You go through the motions, but the spark is gone. The draining habit here is self-denial. Convincing yourself you don't want what you really want burns enormous energy. Try this. Make a list of 5 things you secretly want but rarely admit, big or small. Maybe it's taking a solo trip. Maybe it's speaking more freely. Notice how just writing them down sparks something inside you. That spark is your energy returning. Third, chasing perfection instead of wholeness. This might be the greatest drain of all. Many people believe they need to be flawless in order to be worthy. So they exile their mistakes, their flaws, their awkward moments, pretending they don't exist. But deep down, they're stuck in a race they can never win. Perfection is a bottomless pit. It will eat every ounce of energy you feed it. Jung taught that the goal of life isn't perfection, it's individuation becoming whole. Integration means welcoming the messy, contradictory, imperfect parts of yourself back home. The moment you stop fighting who you are, the energy that was lost in the battle comes flooding back. Here's something you can try. Stand in front of a mirror and say out loud, "I am allowed to be whole, not perfect." Notice what happens in your body. Resistance might come up, and that's okay. It means you've touched a belief that's ready to be released. These 3 lessons, reclaiming anger, honoring desire, and letting go of perfection, are the keys to true integration. They shift shadow work from a constant struggle into a process of healing. And once you begin to integrate, the energy that's been leaking through self-betrayal finally starts to return. But shadow work isn't only personal. It carries a deeper meaning that connects you to the collective. And that's where we're heading next. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Why terrifying? Because accepting yourself means facing the shadow, the parts you've hidden, rejected, or betrayed. It means no longer living a double life, smiling on the outside while secretly suffocating inside. The draining habit we've been exploring, self-betrayal, isn't just a personal issue, it's a cultural epidemic. We live in a world that rewards masks. On social media, we see filtered smiles and curated lives. At work, we polish resumes to look flawless. Even in relationships, people feel pressure to perform instead of being real. And beneath all that, millions are quietly exhausted, disconnected, and unseen. That's why shadow work isn't just private healing. It's an act of honesty in a world addicted to pretense. When you stop betraying yourself, you don't just reclaim your energy, you give others permission to do the same. Your authenticity becomes contagious. Think about how it feels to be around someone who speaks their truth without apology, who shows their imperfections openly, who doesn't waste energy pretending. Being with them feels like a breath of fresh air. That's the power of integration. It doesn't just heal you, it shifts the space around you. On a larger scale, the habit of self-betrayal keeps entire systems in place. Institutions and cultures rely on people staying quiet, staying agreeable, staying small. When you silence your needs, repress your anger, or deny your desires, you're easier to control. But when you integrate your shadow, when you say no with clarity, when you embrace your imperfections, when you reclaim your vitality, you become unpredictable. You become free. Jung often emphasized that humanity's future depends on the integrity of the individual. In other words, the collective shadow can't be transformed until enough individuals face their own. Every small act of honesty matters. Every time you stop apologizing for existing, every time you choose truth over performance, you're not just healing yourself, you're offering medicine to the culture around you. So, when we talk about energy draining, it's not just about waking up tired. It's about generations inheriting patterns of silence, repression, and self-denial. And when you break this habit, you're not only reclaiming your life, you're breaking a chain. You're opening a door for the future, where wholeness matters more than perfection, truth matters more than image, and vitality matters more than performance. Integration is both deeply personal and profoundly collective. It's the journey from darkness to awareness, from fragmentation to unity. And that's where we're heading now, the conclusion of this journey, and an invitation for you to step fully into your wholeness. So let's bring everything together. There's one shadow habit that drains more energy than stress, lack of sleep, or even overwork. It's the habit of self-betrayal, the small, everyday choices that add up. Saying yes when you mean no, smiling through discomfort, apologizing for existing, overperforming to earn love, avoiding conflict, disowning anger, denying desire, and chasing perfection instead of wholeness. Each one may look harmless on its own, but together they form an invisible leak in your life force. No wonder so many people feel tired no matter how much they rest, because rest can't restore what repression drains. Shadow work is the path back, not by fixing yourself, but by reclaiming yourself, by naming the truths you've buried, by letting your anger be acknowledged, your needs respected, your desires honored, by remembering you're not here to be perfect, you're here to be whole. Jung said that until we make the unconscious conscious, it directs our lives and we call it fate. That's exactly what you've begun to do just by listening. You've pulled this draining habit out of the shadows and into the light, and awareness alone already begins to restore energy. But awareness is only the first step. Transformation comes in practice, pausing before you say yes, replacing needless apologies with gratitude, giving yourself permission to want what you truly want. Every small act of honesty is like removing one stone from the traveler's lamp. With each stone lifted, the burden grows lighter and the light shines brighter. So I invite you to reflect. Where in your life are you betraying yourself in small daily ways? What truths have you been swallowing? And what would it feel like, just once, to honor them openly? Your shadow doesn't exist to destroy you. It exists to guide you back to the pieces of yourself you've lost. And when you integrate those pieces, your energy returns, your vitality returns, your wholeness returns. If this message resonates, take a moment to reflect on it. Maybe even share in the comments one example of self-betrayal you've recognized and how you might choose differently next time. And if you want to keep exploring these ideas, to dive deeper into Jung, into shadow work, into the journey of integration, I invite you to subscribe and stay connected. Because the path from darkness to wholeness is not one you have to walk alone. Remember, your energy was never truly lost. It's been hiding in the shadow, waiting for you to reclaim it.